that we are still even coming out in this day and age with everything that we know about species extinction, about the drivers of climate change, even the drivers of what creates more intense wildfires, like what we need to do for water quality. Isn't this just incredible, like phenomenal? And, you know, I got a day job, I pay taxes. My taxes subsidise the destruction of everything that I love in those forests. Incredible, isn't it? So how does this happen? Well, our next speaker, David Heilpern, is here to give us some of that background, particularly around that sort of legal context. So I will introduce David, even though he does need no introduction. He's a retired magistrate, author of 4 books, has been a strong advocate of law reform, civic rights throughout his entire career. He never stopped standing up for us, even when he was sitting down in front of us. In 1998, he became one of the youngest magistrates in New South Wales, and he also co-founded that school at SCU, where he's now Dean of Law. Brilliant and entertaining, we all need to know that. And he's also did that fabulous article just recently in the Byron Shire Echo about Forestry Corp. So here we are, David Heilpern.
What a brilliant collection of tree huggers. And hi Mum, hi Bobby. Look, there's just generations of forest activists here, and you know, it's an opportunity to say thank you. Thank you for what you've done and what you've saved. So many thanks. You know, I was preparing to speak about some legal aspects, and I will, but in preparing this, I was, a couple of weeks ago, I was surrounded by a stunning stand of Sydney blue gums. And I realised this is not just legal, it's not just educational, it's not just intellectual. This is spiritual. This is really deep. We are here because we really care about these trees and these animals and our children and grandchildren. And let's hear it for us. So I've been doing some digging, and legal digging, and recently there was a judgment where Forestry Corporation was fined $360,000 for illegally, maliciously taking out 53 mature native trees, therefore removing canopy and habitat in a bushfire-affected state forest area. And of course they took out those trees for logging for the industry. They argued in court that they had good prospects of rehabilitation. The court rejected that completely. They argued that they had low prospects of reoffending. The court rejected that comprehensively. They said they were remorseful. No, said the court, you have tried to minimise the damage you've caused, and we reject that as well. They said their evidence was clear and compelling, and the judge said no, it was vague and unhelpful. The court also detailed 14 prior convictions. That's leaving aside matters where they just got tickets or warnings or notices. This is actually beyond a reasonable doubt criminal offences. This is extraordinary. You know, I was thinking, well, what makes a criminal organisation? When they were developing the laws, they thought, you know, bikie gangs and people who support terrorists and youth crime gangs. No one ever expected that you'd have to make some sort of assessment about whether a government corporation would be a criminal organisation. But I'm making that judgment now. I mean, if you have 14 prior convictions for damaging native trees, you are not going to get a working with children check. You are not going to get a security licence. You are not going to get a job. It's outrageous to think that they are still in existence. So I started digging. Of course, we already know that last year they lost $28 million. And in fact, over the last 5 years, the government has pumped in $247 million into Forestry Corp by way of loss. So not only are they logging our native forest, but it's costing us for them to do it. And so there's a structure to this, and it's really interesting. Well, I find it really interesting. So it's a government corporation, and who are the shareholders? The Minister, the Treasurer, and the Minister for Finance are the shareholders. So it's us. Who are the board? Well, there's 3 members of the board. The Chair, Stephanie Loader, mining executive ex-Rio Tinto. Rob DeFegoli, who is a logging industry stalwart and who resigned from Bendigo Bank's board because they were not going to support native forest logging. And there's the CEO who gave evidence in that case that I just referred to as being vague and unhelpful. Let's look at that board and ask, well, why aren't they criminally liable for the actions of an organisation that just keeps on reoffending over and over and over again? So Higginson will be up next. Let's hope that the upper house or someone can instigate an inquiry into the Forestry Commission, their board. I mean, why aren't there environmental members on that board? There's not even unionists. There's not even workers. There's no teachers, no scientists, no educators, just industry members. And that is an absolute disgrace. So, as was just said, Western Australia has got rid of native forest logging. Victoria is on the path. What stands in the way in New South Wales is an organisation called Forestry Corp and the politicians who support it. And they should be called to account for supporting a criminal organisation that loses money and that is in no way shown itself to be responsible for caring for tens of thousands, millions of hectares of our native forests. Get rid of Forestry Corp. Finally, I was mistaken when Chris Minns announced a koala national park. I actually thought he meant a park with trees. I also thought he meant a park with koalas. But he told me recently that if you look up from space, the shape is almost like a koala with no arms and no legs. And that's why it's called the Koala National Park. So I guess we were all mistaken about that, but seriously, that was an election promise. They must be held to account, and a logged national park is not a national park at all. So, am I safe in assuming that we're calling for the destruction and removal of Forestry Corp? I think we'll call that unanimous. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, David. Well, we're